Well, hello everyone. Hey Kristian, it's good to have you. Thank you for taking the time. Before anything, I'll let you introduce yourself and excited for this conversation.
Thank you, Arthur. It's a pleasure to be here. And Kristian Gjerding, founder and CEO of CellPoint Digital.
Let's start from the beginning, right? Like, knowing that you're a CEO and founder, what was the original problem, right, in the travel space that you kind of saw, and what made you want to build CellPoint?
Yeah, so this is my second startup, and by far the most complex startup. And there's a little bit of learning in that. So I'm an enterprise guy back from the 90s. And at the end of the decade, I got tired of working for other people and decided to start my first business, which was diametrically different. So I went into mobile commerce. Handheld devices were just beginning to come out around the globe. We're seeing utilization picking up, particularly in Europe and Northern Europe, about 90-some% quite quickly. And you're also seeing sort of like the beginning of the post.com bubble, so to speak, thereabouts, or at least the height of it at that point in time. So a lot of things were changing, business models were changing, and I built a company to do digital content distribution and billing. We built a billing engine that was using sort of back channel mobile networks for consumer engagement. And so in reality, the concept was to just do this, and we built this platform, and it really worked, and we got a lot of pretty big global clients. And then I sold it in 2005, and at that point, it was clear to me that looking at global merchants in a B2C environment, they would be struggling with a digital sales channel that was just evolving, payment ecosystem that was beginning to fragment at that point in time. People have begun talking about mobile payments and wallets and all kinds of stuff. And then you would have these merchants with legacy infrastructures that would be, 20, 30, 40 years old. And so the beginning was the problem we're looking to solve was to really do commerce orchestration between these three diverse environments. And we began building the platform in 2007. We launched it in 10 with a rail client, and then we went into air. And air is massively complex, very slow moving, and incredibly risk adverse for all good reasons. And so it turned out to be a good fit for us and for the type of platform we're building. And so we began expanding our platform significantly into payment optimization in 2013. And I do believe that we were the category creator of payment orchestration and also payment optimization, considering the early start. There's probably some other companies that'll argue that, and at some point in time, I'm going to sit with those CEOs and we can have a conversation over drinks. But at least we were very early on announcing a platform in 2008 at a Mobile Forum conference in Copenhagen, no less. And so we kind of built on that, and the problem was really to help merchants turning a cost center into a profit center. So really making payments an ROI item, a revenue accelerator. It was also to help manage the insane back office pressure that would come from all these new things, and we can talk about that later. And then last but not least, user journeys were horrible. The user experience in the beginning was really terrible, and I was along for the ride. Even at the beginning, I started programming HTML, which is whatever back in the day. Even though I'm not really a super techie, I am technical enough to have sort of devised the vision for this platform. And that was the beginning, and I think that problem only accelerated. And I think COVID set the travel world back about 3 years, give or take, maybe even 4. Some will argue. And I think where we are right now is that this has become a priority for travel merchants, and we're beginning to see. We're moving from sort of early adopters to early majority from a market penetration perspective.
Yeah, the travel space is extremely interesting. Before diving into that specifically, funny enough, my background is I did like a master's in business analytics. And so like I actually learned how to code very early on. You could not pay me enough money to go back to that. I think it's pretty clear I'm a people person, but I wanted to go through that journey a bit like you, right? To be techie enough to understand how the tech actually works, so that then whenever you have conversations, well, first you can have conversations with almost anyone, and second, like any type of person, whether it's an engineer, whether it's a product manager, whether it's somebody in the financial space, and also like on the business side. But to me, like it's always been about people, and it sounds like for you, it's about people and product, which is pretty cool. The travel space is one of those spaces that to me is fascinating. Why? Because there's so much legacy technology, right, that is still being used today. And because of the complexity, when you think about, and I was thinking about this not too long ago, I just flew to Paris, right? I was in New York, and I was thinking about how insane it is that each route for each airplane, and there are like hundreds of thousands of them like flying a day when you look at the globe, you look at the routes and you look at how everything is controlled, and you look how everything is ultimately communicating, right? Different systems, and it's very old tech, but to even make that work in the first place is incredible. And so how do you disrupt such a space, right? Like how do you disrupt travel? Like what has kind of your thoughts been on that, and how is CellPoint really, becoming such an expert in that space specifically?
Yeah, so travel requires deep domain knowledge, and you got to go really deep from an integrations perspective, and you have to understand not just the business of travel. You have to understand the legacy infrastructure that you're working with, and it is a very old but very, very stable infrastructure. Travel is a very complex industry, and just thinking about the fact that they're transporting people in these tin cans at 10,000 meters, going about 700-800 kilometers an hour. And in reality, they're kind of also landlocked, right? Because they got to have departure points and landing points to manage their route networks. And so when you think it through, particularly for airlines, but some of this also goes obviously for other travel merchants. You have thousands of daily passengers doing God knows how many different legs. And then you multiply that by a whole range of transactions happening, multiplied by currencies, regions, compliance legislation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're done, you're talking millions of technical interactions across hundreds of systems on a global basis. And it actually works. I mean, so the vast majority of travel works. When something is interrupted, it is not the technical side of things that breaks down the most. It's really weather, or traffic jams in the air, practically. And so servicing the travel industry requires you to have very deep domain knowledge. You got to be deeply integrated into a whole range of systems, and you can't sort of be generic. So you got to have a lot of specific capabilities and features that caters to the needs of the verticals that you serve. And we predominantly serve air and hospitality at the moment.
So like you mentioned some of the complexity of the industry, right? Where does payments ultimately come and fit into that ecosystem?
Yeah, so historically, payments has been an afterthought in travel. Granted, you're gonna have to be able to take payment to generate revenue, but it was really something that you had to do, and it was a cost. And a lot of focus on the airlines was focused on the cost side. I think airlines are now beginning to realize, particularly with payment orchestration, which has always been sort of our brand promise to make our clients money, that this can be a revenue accelerator and ROI generator. And so helping them on the financial value chain is critical if you want to operate in this space. So we see a significant contribution in terms of conversion and also in terms of cost savings. And both of these things goes to net income, right? So both gross revenue and net income. And these are important components. We're seeing situations where we contribute upwards 14-15% in net earnings contribution on an annual basis for an airline. And that is instrumental. That is really serious stuff. So you got to be able to service them on three axes. of value in my opinion. Obviously, the financial value, which we just discussed, the optimization of payments. Then the customer experience value. You got to be able both to be reliable and have a payments platform that's always available, but you're also going to be able to present the form of payment in whatever region that a particular traveler wants to have. And think of it this way, though. Today's travelers are incredibly affluent. I mean, young people, and I can say that with some conviction, are really very well versed in sophisticated online commerce. For them, utilization of agentic AI, which is obviously the newest component, but anything, APMs, etc., alternative forms of payment, is just natural. There's no barrier for them, right? They can, when you watch them operate a phone or sometimes a laptop, it is super fast, and they switch between systems and apps and whatnot completely affluently. So they're pulling the travel merchants in a direction. They're not waiting for them. And so you got to be able to deliver a customer journey experience that is absolutely on par with other areas of commerce. So we call it it has to be like an Uberification or Amazonification, if you wish, right? These are two good analogies in my mind. And then last but not least, there's a massive pressure on the back office in travel merchants. With these changes, there's procedure changes, there's a lot of additional data. So there's a whole range of places where you need significant automation and reliability. And it is absolutely paramount that a platform, which is really what a payment orchestrator should be, is a tier 1 mission critical platform that you do deliver across these three vectors.
I think first, just double clicking the fact that, having an impact on 14-15% of the net income of a business is pretty damn gigantic. So congratulations to you and the team on this. It's really interesting because I think if I take a step back and I look at travel and I look at, the two verticals that you mentioned inside, which is airlines and hotels, today there's so much choice. And so at any point in time, I'm a United fan for many reasons. I used to live in San Francisco, moving to New York. Two of them are they have airports with hubs, right? And candidly, I stick with them for better or for worse. But not everyone is that way, and you have so many flights with so many airlines going from one place to another. And so if you don't provide an experience, if the payment doesn't go through something else, there's so much choice out there to just go elsewhere. And so this is just one piece, but then again, for now, it has only been, I guess, humans. There's also a bots problem, but humans ultimately making purchases. In the future, it won't just be that. And you touched on it, and I think we'll touch on that later. But the two examples that you just mentioned, right, like Uber and Amazon, will also have to adapt to that new trend that everyone is talking about with AI, payments, agentic commerce, and everything around this. What will be very fascinating is the positioning and how CellPoint, is evolving as a company, as both the travel space is evolving, the technology space is evolving as well with new trends. To name some of them, like stable coins, agentic commerce, new payment methods coming at many times, right? New technologies coming to disrupt obviously the industry as well. How does the platform itself, the CellPoint platform, has evolved to kind of match those changes in the industry as well as those technical changes that you're seeing today and in the past kind of few years now?
Yeah, so we launched our first platform in 2010. Called Velocity. It's still operating, and it still does amazing considering that it's 17-year-old, well, give or take 17-year-old technology. But we did launch our new platform, also One Source Orchestration, in August 2025, together with Southwest Gateway as our launch client. And we built that platform based on the experiences we had for the past 15 years. We actually started building it in 2022 summer, and then we went into a partnership with Southwest at the end of 22 and began programming to the Gateway requirements. And so when I sit and look out, and predictability is really hard in this future reality, right? It's increasingly have become impossible during the past 20 years. I mean, when the internet came in, the world fundamentally changed, right? It really did change. And now with AI, it's going to change again pretty fundamentally. And there's a few other vectors happening out there in terms of energy and God knows what else on a macro level. So when I look at the outlook, my objective is always to create a platform that has incredible resilience, scalability, but also adaptability. So adapting to new tech trends coming into consideration. But there's a few things that is generic across the ages, which is really, again, the user experience has to be optimal. That is just a trigger point. If you can't, when cryptocurrencies came into play in the beginning, and I got myself a wallet back in the beginning of this, right, just to figure it out and kind of learn it. It was a nightmare getting cash onto a crypto wallet, and a lot of transactions got lost and people never got their money and whatnot. So that was not for mass adoption, right? And then the Bitcoin came in and it became sort of investment opportunity, and some people made a lot of money and some people lost a lot of money. But that's still what it is. When you look at some of the new cryptocurrencies, that's just changing, right? So usability is essential. Reliability and scalability is going to be the same always, right? If you can't grow and scale with your clients, then that becomes a problem as well. And then there's functionality. So you can have super futuristic functionality that really doesn't add value. And I can name a number of platforms that everybody uses. And if you do an analysis, 90% uses less than 10%. So having functionality that actually matters right now is essential for the way that you do these things. And on that note, I am living on the flight path for 20% of the flights coming in to where I am right now. So sometimes when the wind is the right way, I get airplanes. I hope you can't hear it. Anywho, so having that functionality that generates actual value is essential. And then there needs to be backwards compatibility. So whatever future is coming onto you, you need to be able to connect to what you have already and leverage the value. And there's a lot of intrinsic value in the tech stack that exists in travel. If you can't do that, you're not going to see massive lift and shift projects anymore. Even no matter how fast the technology moves, if you can't get the backwards compatibility working, you're going to have challenges. And then comes how do you embrace future technologies? And I remember I was at a Money 2020 event, and it's got to be 2019, could have been 18 in Las Vegas. And everybody was talking about, a combination of mobile wallets and the blockchain ledger. And you saw companies raising insane amounts of money on both with zero revenues. And today, I think everybody realizes that blockchain were way early. It's now only beginning to come into its real maturity, and you're beginning to see technologies that has value, because the blockchain in its own right doesn't necessarily add value. And my point with all this is to answer your question, looking forward is important and seeing what is out there and what can be used. But what's most important is the ability to prioritize that against what is needed right now. And if you don't do that, and if you spend too much time building technology that looks great or, seems fancy or does futuristic stuff, but it has no really applied value right now, then you're not going to see merchants adopting it. Things takes time, and it has to be embedded not just in the consumer base, but it also has to be embedded into how it provides value from these three axes: financial, customer experience, and back office.
I think adding value is always critical. I think having the planes, by the way, in the background is pretty lovely, knowing that we're talking about travel payments. I think that's a nice little add-on. So I wouldn't say that's something to be disregarded. That's something that should be absolutely included.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think to touch on the points you were making around how technology should affect, right, the industries, but kind of people and the value, right, that the technology is providing. Technology to me is something that can be used in many different ways. The blockchain, as you mentioned, is really a ledger. When you think about money moving, right, like it's data moving. The money is not really moving at the end of the day, like very rarely, right? And so when I think about this, I think you're entirely right on one point, which is you need technology to add value. If not, why use it, right? Why disrupt it? I think that you're also right on the fact that, the blockchain technology is one that is still early. I think that from what I'm seeing, strategically, I'm involved with a few businesses on that front. And when I think about what they're seeing, what I hear about it, what I see from my perspective as well, right, as the co-founder of Connecting the Dots and the different discussions and events that I'm attending, is the technology is now finally being used for real use cases where it actually adds value, where the traditional way of doing things is either not providing the value that's necessary, or the traditional way of doing things does not actually permit the actual outcome that you want. And in this case, using the blockchain to me is extremely important. I also think that, again, a bit like you, from a revolution perspective, the .com was one, AI is one as well. I think I did a quick little video not too long ago about, I think it was called Let's Get Real. And it was literally about agentic commerce and everything touching this, and like the amount of misinformation out there. There are things that, that should be said and others that cannot be said. When I think about agentic commerce and the pace at which it's going to disrupt kind of everything that we know and we know it as today, is people are already using, chatbots. And what I mean by that is like agents. And so like, because they're already using those agents in their daily lives, like it's just adding a new way of using that. And so I think the adoption will be extremely quick. And so I think that, each player has a role to play in enabling kind of those transactions. Like, let's just look at the payment side of things for a second, but enabling those transactions, so enabling it to happen. I don't think there will be an adoption problem on that front. People are starting to think and start talking about, I don't know if I'll trust an agent. Yeah, sure. After everyone has done it a million times, then of course you will as well, right? So it's I don't think that's the real question. The real question is like, what is the role of the different businesses in enabling kind of agentic commerce? Have you guys put any, I'm sure you have, but have you guys put any thought into this trend specifically? So double clicking on agentic commerce and the payment side of it from a CellPoint perspective in the travel space.
Yeah, so obviously we're embracing this on the back end side and also on the front side that we need to be able to do, right? So you will have agentic AI components or avatars, agents that will initiate payment transactions on behalf of clients, and there's a whole range of things that takes place in that scenario. Ultimately, as the payment transaction flows into concluding a transaction, the flows are the same on the back end. You still need to do all the things that an orchestrator needs to do. Where it becomes really interesting and where I think it presents an opportunity, but also a challenge for the travel merchants, is really that, if your agentic AI or the agent is just really replicating what you do on existing travel sites, it's not going to add a ton of value. It might be a little easier. You may be able to compare more things, but in reality, it does not really change the dynamics of travel big time. But when you look at the other part, there's data, and data is essential to really exploit the value of agentic AI. So for me as a traveler, and I travel a significant amount, so I have a lot of preferences, right? There are a lot of preferences for me that matters. I if I'm flying to the US, I got particular seats I want to sit in because I don't have global entry. I don't have a US passport, so I got to run for immigration, right? And if it's Miami, I just know.
I feel you so badly. You have no idea.
I know. So I am typically the first guy off the plane, right? I will almost cheat my way to the door. And so, understanding these things going to have a value. I may be willing to pay more for a seat. So this is an opportunity, right? But the challenge is if you don't have the data or you're unable to retrieve the data and deliver them to people, then obviously you're going to have a problem. And so giving that additional data layer, which is way deeper than what's available today, will become an opportunity. And if you are behind that curve, it's going to become a challenge. Because I can sit and I can deliver a lot, or I can request a lot of specific points around my trip that today's platforms don't necessarily have available. If you can move in that direction, you have an opportunity to price your product way more dynamically. And I think that's going to be very attractive because I'm willing to pay for it. I'm willing to pay for certain things. You may have a family. What they want to pay for is just to sit together and have an easy time going through the airport, not too much hassle with lockers, that kind of thing. And so every travel brand is unique in that they have a particular market they're going to. And, so you got low-cost carriers, you got hybrid carriers, you got full flag carriers. And they all do different things. They could be regional, global, whatever it may mean, right? Who is their interline partners and so on and so forth. So there's things that will define why you fly with them. You choose United as your primary flight partner. And obviously that gives certain value to you and probably serves the routes you fly the most and whatnot. But as agentic AI really comes into fruition here over the coming year or two, you will see that travel merchants will be required to give more information about their product, because that's really the differentiator. The differentiator may not just be price anymore. It may, and for sure, there are certain brackets that are price based and whatnot. But if you're within the same, and there is there's a span between cheapest and highest within whatever sector you're flying, right? Are you flying leisure? You're flying family? You're flying business? But if you're within that band, you may not necessarily lose on price. Not many people is going to drop a ticket on $200-300 if it's a $4,000 ticket. They're going to go for what is the value I'm going to get from the travel brand I'm flying. And this is where agentic AI really going to come into play. Hotels is another thing, right? I mean, I don't want to have to check in at reception. I want to be able to circumnavigate reception. Can I buy stuff from the pantry without having to go in a line? Because unfortunately, I decided to pick stuff up at 6 p.m. And this is where everybody comes in. So now I'm in line to pay for 5 bottles of water for my family for 2 hours. Exaggeration, but you get the drift. I mean, these things will begin to become advantages that if you can promote them, you're going to get there. And I want to say one more thing. I just remembered on the competition you said before, if the payment fails, will I go to another competitor? That might be that might be an option. But there's another option, which is not quite as bad, but really bad for the airline and for the hotel too. If they can't serve me directly, I will go through an OTA. And now the cost of selling that seat or that hotel room will explode. So that's another component you got to think of, right? As agentic AI comes in reality, I think the brands or the companies suffering the most will probably be the OTAs or the meta search engines.
So I'll jump on two things. The first one that I really liked is you're looking at AI, and I think we want to differentiate. There is AI applied to internal processes for a payment processor, like you get. There is AI applied for inside of a business, a merchant. And then there's three, and then there is obviously agentic commerce, right? Which is like an agent actually making a purchase. And I think for the first two buckets, right, payment processors have an opportunity to provide more data. At the end of the day, you look at merchants and PSPs and orchestrators and everything in between, and data that you will capture, it will be a data war. And so PSP being able to capture more data, contextualize it, and then being able to provide that to merchants will love it. Why? Because then the processes that they're going to build in order to capture the data and be able to use it is also going to be based on the data they're receiving. So it's all the same ecosystem. So I really like the differentiation between AI applied internally and AI from an agentic perspective. And then the second point is, you were mentioning Amazon, Uber, here OTAs. All of those are, the way I look at them, all of those are marketplaces, right? If you really think about it, right? Uber may be a little less from a disruption perspective because you can't just call a cab. You can call a cab, but you can't really call all of the drivers that they have. You don't have access to them. They're the gateway to that. Whereas an Amazon or an OTA, right? You can go direct. You can go get that product directly. And so yeah, I so agree with you that I think those type of businesses really have adapting, but I think that you guys at the end will have a role to play as well. I think one of the biggest things that we're discussing right now is you look at OTAs, how do you identify bots, right? Bot versus agents. And so that's also something where I think payment processors have a role to play in being able to provide kind of information to say, hey, like we identified that this is an agent that's carrying the credential, or we identified that this is a bot. And so like that's how I would look at like the evolution of this and potentially the role that you have to play, which seems pretty aligned with everything that you've mentioned so far.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think, there's going to be a whole lot of opportunity. And I think down the line, what I've seen historically is that whenever these transformational shifts happens, gravity always wins. And what I mean by that is that the most common reality most often wins. It has to create value for both the traveler and the travel merchant. Otherwise, is not going to fly, right? You can, as I said, you can have all these fancy things, but if it doesn't really do anything, end of the day, that's not gonna fly. And so to speak. And so I think that's important. I definitely think AI has a massive role to play, both operationally. So whether you're an orchestrator or an acquirer, whatever, or a travel merchant, I think there's a lot of operational, analytical, and so on and so forth use cases for AI, and we're already using it in a whole range of ways, right? And then there is, as you said, on the agentic side, where brands have to be ready to connect to these and to understand how do we handle that from a futuristic perspective. And talking about blockchain, one of the uses I believe is going to happen, and I can't predict exactly when that will happen, but I think it's going to come over time, is that you're going to have to orchestrate the anonymous. And what does that mean? What it really means is, from a travel merchant, today you're a United loyal customers and you got United loyalty, and they recognize you when you connect because you're logging into the platform and they can see your status and give you the benefits that entails. But what if they don't have that information when you connect? What if you connect through an agent on the blockchain? They don't know who you are, but you can express the value you have as a traveler in some numerical manner that will allow the receiving platform to identify you as a particular type of traveler with whatever status you generically have across travel in general, right? So what is my annual portfolio? Do I do mostly international, national, combination? What kind of hotels do I like to stay at? And so let's imagine I fly 5 different airlines in a year. I do about 400,000 miles. And that information is given by the travel merchants back into the blockchain. And I can then portray that in an anonymized fashion when I connect to you as a travel brand. You don't know who I am at the first time, but you can see my value based on the data transmitted from the chain. That's going to be really interesting, because it really means that you're flying United. Let's say you fly Delta or American tomorrow, or another airline, Southwest for that matter, and you say, hey, these airlines say, hey, this person is a frequent traveler. We can see we have a product that fits perfectly. Why don't we try and attract this person with some really good offers initially and see if we can get the business going?
It's making customer data almost like interoperable and making sure that like the customer has control over his data. But that's leveraging the blockchain the way that it should be used. Now, I don't know if merchants are going to be very happy with that, but that's customers having their preferences outside of a merchant, enabling them to pass them.
But it really, if you think about it, as I said, I fly a lot, you fly a lot. I'm a member of a number of different airlines, and I typically pick the best route and a price that gives me the best service. I don't think the merchants have a choice. It's up to them to evolve their business model to sustain what's going to happen. And I think orchestrating the anonymous is going to be, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I don't know, but it's going to happen at some point, because people are getting more and more frustrated with the insane amount of auto-generated content out there. Every time you give your data, you're getting inundated with spam mail and God knows what else. People have multiple different email addresses just to get away from that problem. On my phone, I get robocalls probably 20 times a day, and it's really impossible to get rid of them, right? The only way is that I stop giving out my data. And then you got the whole governmental point, right? You look at the UK and other European countries, and now the US, right? You're going to give 5 years of social media history. What? I mean, that is a Orwellian nightmare we're looking at right now. And I think there's going to be a reaction to that. And I think you're going to start seeing people saying, you know what, we're going to go low tech for a lot of stuff. We're also seeing this in the travel space, right? A lot of people want to go glamping rather than into these nightmarish, let me give you all my data type deals. And so I think you're going to see a shift over the coming period of time where youth realizes that they gotta have to get off social media. It's not adding to their value. It's becoming a problem. They're seeking particular influencers who adds value and don't just try and sell your product. And so there's going to be this whole shift in my perspective over the coming 5, 10, 15 years. And I can see it in my own kids, right? They're ages 17 and 14. And already we have conversations about bot-generated content overtaking, what is the authenticity of what they're watching, who is trying to present what argument, what are people trying to sell you. They don't look at email anymore. They don't have email. They're limiting the amount of platforms they're engaging with. You have to cater for these consumers in the next 5, 10 years, big time. And I think that's going to be where the blockchain is going to play a really instrumental role.
Yeah, this is fascinating because I think it's the first time that I've heard someone say that the social media usage is going to decrease. But candidly, I think there's some reasoning behind this. I've shut down. Obviously, LinkedIn is not one that I will shut down obviously anytime soon. But maybe they shut me down. Who knows? But it's true that the type of content, like for example myself on Instagram, like the type of content that I'm trying to watch has to be hyper curated. And so now actually you have a little thing that says you can tailor your algorithm right around what you want to see. But then there is, as you said, the type of content, who's creating the content and everything else. I think social media platforms they're a bit like at this point like Meta and those players are the same as like Visa and MasterCard. They will just adapt. And so I don't see them going anywhere or anything like this. I just think that they will adapt, and I think consumers will adapt as well. I think those are two good points. I guess one big question that I had for you today was around the OSO platform and kind of, the new, going from a 17-year-old tech that was working to a new platform, big changes. What would you say is I don't want to use the word revolutionary because everyone does, but what would you say is really differentiating that platform from both the one that you had before and potentially not really look at competition, but what you've seen in the market?
Right. So we built also because we wanted to move into a reality where we could follow suit on the cloud native capabilities. So Velocity was built as a multi-tenancy platform. It was meant to service a community and have one code base that would then evolve over time. And we've done a lot of proprietary capabilities on that platform for specific clients that we haven't rolled out. It's in the platform, but it's not used by other clients. And so, as you progress, technologies evolve and enable certain things to be done incredibly fast. And so there is a couple of choke points that we wanted to get around. We wanted to move into that. There's also then the obvious facts. As technology evolves and some technology just becomes old, you can't get people to actually code that platform anymore. And we could see that happening, right? Obviously, programmers, as you well know, wants to toy with the newest tech and they want to get involved with the newest things. And so if you want to get a broad band of capable people, you need to do that. And then ultimately, if you look at payments, before payment orchestrators came into play, and it took a long time, and I can guarantee you some of my esteemed colleagues in the industry will say the same, it took a long time of preaching before people really realized the value of payment orchestration. Yeah, so you had an attitude of using an external service provider, but you would use a bunch of internal platforms. As this transcended into actually being a considered platform play, what mattered was that you had this single point of failure, a mission critical tier 1 platform that would now sit and be responsible for your commercial success. So if your payment platforms goes down, a travel merchant can't take payments. That is really where payment orchestration platforms are moving. And we could see that no matter what we would do to our Velocity platform, moving much beyond 99994, maybe 99995 was very, very hard. And anybody working in enterprise technology will know that the difference, that 0.1% difference is expensive and very complicated to reach. So we wanted to architect this platform for a couple of very important things. Obviously, a dynamically changing cybersecurity threat, and it's going to just explode. So we wanted to base it on the newest technologies that will enable us to adapt on a minute-by-minute basis, applying patches, changes, updates without taking down the platform. You can't do that with old technology. It's just not possible. You have to plan downtime. We wanted to be able to offer single tenancy to massive enterprise clients. So we could do phased rollouts, we could do proprietary rollouts, and blue-green deployments, continuous deployments, whatever it would be that a particular client required, without impeding the community-based platform. And obviously that comes at a price. It's expensive to run single tenancy, but we wanted to have that while still maintaining one code base. And then we wanted ultra-high availability, guaranteed 5 nines. Literally we're moving towards 7 nines, which is almost impossible. And so we built a lot of sophisticated infrastructure to accommodate that in a multi-region cloud-native environment. We wanted to utilize the newest cloud tools to empower our clients to choose different kinds of back office solutions, fraud solutions, etc. So that was really some of the key things. And then we wanted to be able to deploy functionality faster than we can sell it, which is where we are now. So we can add stuff very, very rapidly because we got we kind of build our teams around how cloud technology empowers you to do software development and also product innovation, right? So we have a very rapid process to deliver things, and native AI for sure. We're using AI across analytics, onboarding, operations, etc., and we're just expanding that like no tomorrow, which is so essential. But also in coding. And while I don't believe AI can completely take over programmers, 'cause we've just seen that's not the case, particularly when you talk about very complex infrastructure systems. There's just so much old technology you got to be able to work with. But you can do repetitive factory-based tasks. You can most certainly use AI, and we do that. So there was a whole range of reasons why this platform was most certainly necessary. And then it was taking all these, and that's my last point, all these amazing features and functions and update them and put them into a environment where we could rapidly measure ROI.
I think it sounds like you've made a platform that is now scalable, whereas the other one was, from a code perspective, harder to scale, ability to deliver more features and functionalities. It's like a whole switch. It's impressive. Like I completely understand why the need for a new platform, and I understand it's a big lift why you would do this. I do believe that AI is an enabler. It's an adds. It's not something that will replace. Will replace some things, yes, the repetition, but like ultimately, I agree with you. You need to tell it what to do still. But yeah, no, like I think the availability, as we mentioned, and we both know this, I think I've experienced it myself. Availability is so important, and having 7 nines is something that's as you said almost impossible to achieve. So extremely interesting. I think that gave me so much more clarity around why the new platform and how it performs. I think maybe to finish up on 2 quick questions, so like very quick fireside chat. If you had a team of C-suites in front of you from the travel space, in a few words, what would you tell them to watch out for in 2026?
I would say value creation and reliable partner. A reliable partner that creates value, financial value, customer value, and operational value. That would be the one sentence that would describe CellPoint, and hopefully what they would say back to us. We speak to our clients frequently, and they all admit that the platform does generate financial value significantly. And obviously we see the numbers and we have conversations with them about that. And we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars a year, which is a lot. That is the riding perception, I would say. If I was to put it just in a really simple sentence, it would be turning cost to profit across the line. I think that's a very important thing. And then servicing the entire payment supply chain, B2C to B2B, is essential.
And then one last thing, I guess, what are you most excited about in 2026, specifically for yourself personally?
Yeah, so, building a company is hard work. And what really makes it work is an amazing team. And I think CellPoint has an amazing team. We worked really hard over the years to get ourselves into a strong position as a business, and it's not without its challenges. There is a million moving parts. And when you get into to really gelling across the organization, people have a clear purpose. They understand the vision and how what they do impacts that vision. I think we're coming into that now. Everything seems to be clicking into place. And when you begin, when you set off, or when you start out, you got this idea and you're piloting this thing and you're trying to make it stick, right? And in reality, you're not halfway commercially baked. You're trying to figure it out. I've been to so many meetings with clients that go, "Oh, that sounds amazing. If we had that problem, we would do it." But we don't have that problem right now. And you're trying to figure that out, right? How do you financially make it attractive while you still make money? All these different things. I think we're coming into that sweet spot right now. As I said, we're going from early adopters to early majority in 26. We're seeing a massive pull in the market. We entered into some strategic partnerships that is lifting us forward fast. We're seeing that in the airline space, they're making this once-in-a-generation transformational shift from Edifact to offer, order, settle, deliver, which is sort of the new NDC-based architecture that will allow airlines to become truly retailers with the Amazonification. And that's what makes it, I think 26 is going to be the year where travel is going to explode way, way, way beyond even what we expected of 25. It's going to be such an interesting year.
Well, I think I'll contribute to that. So I'll be one of those people contributing to the explosion of travel. But look, Kristian, this was amazing. Obviously, I wish you guys an incredible 2026 year. I'm excited to see where it goes, to continue to follow you and the team. The team is everything. I think people, and I'll end on this, people tend to forget that the word company is how we describe a business, but the word company is literally the people's around you all the time. And so, yeah, companies, businesses are about people. And I'm glad that was one point that was made on this interview. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks everyone that's watching. And your last words, Kristian?
Oh, thanks for having me, Arthur. I think it was a truly interesting conversation. I could spend days talking about where I think blockchain will take us and what's going to happen in the future with various things. Truly a pleasure, and it's nice to talk to somebody who himself has a keen interest in technology and an understanding of the basics. So thank you.